Guys, the reason why they keep making Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, despite the fact that they are causing massive fires in the accounting departments of these individual studios, is purely for us. It's out of the kindness of their hearts that they do this. I'm saying it. It's called Hollywood accounting. Now, I'm going to describe to you what Hollywood accounting is, but before I do that, I'm going to talk about someone from Hollywood who very clearly described Hollywood accounting as well, because then they'll turn around and go, wait a minute, this movie didn't make any profit. This movie costs money, as a matter of fact. Well, that's not always the case. So let's take a look. John Cusack is obviously a very interesting guy. I think he's a cool dude. Where is it? Oh, here it is. The greed is almost legendary, is almost a legendary comic trope. One fun fact, when I was a youngin', I did a film with a boombox, and somehow I got points. Net, not gross. Never expected to see any money, but the film became quite famous. So about 10 years ago, I looked again at the financial statements they were obligated to report. And to my shock, they claimed they had lost $44 million on the film. I thought, wow, I almost bankrupted Fox. Not really. The film cost about $13 million to make, and money spent to release was minimal at the time. 30 years in, that film lost millions every year. A neat accounting trick, don't you think? That is precisely what this is. It's called Hollywood accounting, where you just fucking hammer on losses into a movie. You package losses into a movie so you get tax benefits. Remember, we do this in pretty much every sector, okay? America runs on tax cheats. Our tax code is designed in a way to create tax cheats, and everybody knows it. And for some weird reason, we don't really consider it that way. What am I talking about this? Why am I talking about this? Well, real estate is another sector where you do that all the time. Real estate is a big part of this. Real estate is a great way to do that. That's why Donald Trump only paid like $11 in taxes for many, many years, much less than what you would pay as the average citizen. Okay? How did he do that? He called all of his assets that he owns depreciating assets. He claimed that all of his assets were depreciating. You can do that with real estate, okay? That's how you do it. Here, let's watch a whole ass video on Hollywood accounting, because this is really great. It's a really important thing for you guys to understand. When studio says, oh, we lost so much money on this movie, they're fucking lying. Let's take a look at how they're doing it.
Video today, we're answering one of our patrons' questions because DJ asks us, what's the deal with Hollywood accounting? But just before we get into that, I do want to mention that today's video is brought to you by Mack Weldon, a premium men's essential.
God damn, it's long.
Here's a fun fact for you to mull over. Despite having a clause in his contract that entitled him to a share of the total net profits of Return of the Jedi, David Prowse didn't get so much as a single thin cent from Lucasfilm from this, because on paper, Return of the Jedi, then until today, has been a massive financial failure. So, how is this possible, you ask? Well, it's all thanks to a wonderful concept known colloquially as Hollywood accounting, or more accurately, how to lose friends and screw people. Notable examples of this bastion of pencil pusher ingenuity include the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which New Line Cinema asserts was a horrendous loss for the studio despite it.
Oh god, it was so bad, guys. So bad.
Grossing some $3 billion worldwide in theaters off a combined budget of just $281 million, let alone all the money made after in DVD and Blu-ray sales, streaming rights, games, and other merchandise. Moving on to Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, this one apparently lost Warner Brothers $167 million, while simultaneously being one of the most successful films the studio has ever released, grossing just under $1 billion. In yet another case, the 2002 surprise blockbuster My Big Fat Greek Wedding managed to bring in $370 million, which is about $536 million today, off a production budget of a mere $5 million.
God, everything. God, what a massive loss these movies were.
Yet somehow managed to lose the studio $20 million.
That's crazy. Damn, that's crazy. How is that possible? Please tell us, British Vsauce man.
So yes, they apparently lost 4 times the production budget itself. This means that if the studio is to be believed, they'd have been better off throwing the film in the trash after spending the $5 million for filming and producing the film, rather than earn their cut of that $370 million.
Guys, the reason why they keep making Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, despite the fact that they are gigantic holes, they are causing massive fires in the accounting departments of these individual studios, is purely for us. It's out of the kindness of their hearts that they do this. You don't understand.
How is this?
You don't get it. These guys love us. They love movies and they love us. After all, Nicole Kidman told me so. That's why they're doing it.
In ticket sales and all the revenue streams that came after. Perhaps best showing how it's impossible to make money in Hollywood is the case of Forrest Gump, one of the most critically acclaimed and successful movies ever made, which cost $55 million to make. Despite this relatively low figure, unfortunately for executives at Paramount Studios, it never turned a profit after grossing nearly $700 million at the box office. Our condolences to the
They spent $600 million on Indiana Jones to make $200 million for us. Okay, that one is actually a bit of a flop, though. There's a difference. There's a difference there. What you're talking about with these other movies is like they spend like $1 million and make 10 in return, and then they say the movie lost $20 million for the studio. That one actually is a flop. If you spend $600 million on Indiana Jones and then only get fucking $200 million on release at the box office, then yeah, that is a flop for sure.
Executives and their families, after no doubt all of the executives were fired for backing such a financially disastrous project for the studio. These are by no means cherry-picked examples, with some estimates suggesting that upwards of 80% of all major studio releases lose money, according to the studios, which somehow magically manage to stay in business anyway. So, well, what gives? Well, certainly not the studios. But how and why are they doing this? As to the former question of how do they do it, well, they have countless tricks up their sleeves, but one of the biggest ones is simply making separate companies for various projects and aspects of promotion and production. This is important.
Guys, why? You know why they're losing money? Because you pirated it. You went to Kiss Anime and you pirated it. You fucking assholes. I can't believe you did that to the big movie studios, dude. No! They're all out of jobs now. You're part of the problem. It's laughable. That's a laughable concept. Never believe anyone who says that, by the way.
Important because the studio or sub-company can then charge the other company for its own services, essentially paying itself to produce and distribute the movie. In this way, the studio, or vice versa, can charge pretty much whatever it feels like for any service. As an example, the distribution of a film may be handled by another company the studio also owns. This distributor can then charge the parent company really anything they want to distribute the film. The studio will naturally accept this fee no matter how obscene, as they're just paying.
I love when I talk about, certain concepts that relate to like Twitch, and then you're forced to reckon with it. Like years ago, I talked about the DMCA and how game studios could actually just as easily DMCA content creators if they felt like they wanted to do that. And everyone was like, Hasan, they would never do that. You're a fucking idiot. That's so dumb. They don't have the legal right to do that. And then guess what Nintendo did? Nintendo had done that first, and they did it again. They fucking did it recently to some of our friends, if you recall. And this is yet another moment. This is yet another America Deserved 9/11 moment where many of you will come to face the reality, the truth of the matter here. Hollywood accounting is done in every aspect of business, especially one that touches the creative side. Remember what I talked about with respect to Amazon and how they engage in Hollywood accounting by basically always presenting Twitch as a loss leader as they try to monopolize the market, while simultaneously it's just a simple accounting error for them. They could make Twitch tomorrow be in the green. So much so in the green that it is like unimaginable. They're a pure profit-making machine. How could they do that? With one simple trick, by saying AWS costs are $0 now. for Twitch. We're just going to we're going to make it so that there is a loss elsewhere within our corporation. Okay? That's how it works. And one really incredible way to do that is monopolization by doing vertical integration and horizontal integration. I love the people in the chat going, do you participate in Hollywood accounting? I bet you do. Of course I participate in Hollywood accounting. After all, I own the platform that I'm on. I own the distribution mechanisms of the platform that I own, and also numerous other, corporations like delivery mechanisms and whatnot that I can switch my fucking revenue streams to. Are you fucking stupid? I turn on a camera and I talk every day. I don't own any fucking assets that I can claim is like depreciating. Enjoy those tax breaks, eat the rich. Oh my God, you are so fucking stupid. I'm being sarcastic, you absolute idiot. I'm literally talking about how someone could do such a thing. Yeah, when you're Amazon, you can do such a thing. When you're a movie studio, you could do such a thing. When you're a fucking Twitch streamer, you can't do that. Oh my God. Please understand that in order for someone to be able to do this, in order for a corporation to be able to do this, they have to have a fuck ton of assets that they can swap around. They have to be contracting a fuck ton to write out these to write out these fat checks towards and claim that they're losing. Okay? Probably the literal dumbest person I've seen in this chat since I started watching Hasan Reactions. I want to see what else this guy's going to come up with if he does choose to respond later.
Themselves. But now they can show that they had to pay, say, $100 million for distribution, even if the distribution only cost a fraction of that. The distribution company owned by the studio just made a haul, while the film officially cost a lot more to make for the studio itself. A similar thing is often used in marketing, again using a separate arm to handle that, who can then charge the studio who owns them anything they please, which may or may not reflect the actual cost of marketing a given film. Another trick, if a movie was particularly profitable, is to charge fees to cover the pay and bonuses of various studio employees, whether they actually directly had anything to do with the project or not. Similarly, many of the other internal operational costs of a studio can be shifted around different projects easily on paper. Using this fact, part of the losses from an actual box office bomb can be moved to a film that they made a ton of money on, thus making the box office bomb help reduce profits from the successful film. Again,
yeah, Hasan's tax evasion accountant says, the magic of intercompany accounting is beautiful. Exactly. I do love covering issues like this, like what multi-billion-dollar corporations that have like 1,000 other subsidiaries that engage in this kind of thing because they have expanded both vertically and horizontally. And then a guy going, hey, dude with no fucking credit card, don't you do this? Yeah, dude, totally. Because I own a house that I live inside of. So I must be doing the same things.
Again, all in order to ensure every project possible loses money on paper. Additionally, while the movie is being made, accountants will scour receipts to write off everything and anything they can, and at the highest price possible as an expense to further inflate the cost of production. As one industry insider noted in an interview with the New York Times, everything, just everything is deducted. That's the system. You deduct lunches and dinners, Xeroxing, parking, everything. The studio sent me gifts. They were deducted too.
So they spend a shit ton because then they can operate at a loss, and then they can use that loss to say, look at how much money we lost. Therefore, please don't tax me.
So, well, why do they do this? One of the biggest benefits of all these shenanigans is the studios not having to pay royalties to the various entities that otherwise be entitled to pay, as well as in some cases saving a lot of money on taxes, at least in the immediate. On this latter one, this might be done by shifting the ultimate profits into funding things that increases the overall value of the parent company itself. This ensures in a given year they aren't making a cash profit, or at least making less of one. For example, they might snap up the rights to some other another project or purchase another business entity to expand, etc., etc. In some cases, if they can combine this into making it seem like an expense for a given film, all the better. Two birds with one stone and all that. These amazing number tricks are, of course, what is going on with the aforementioned David Prowse, who once recalled in an interview that he periodically received letters from Lucasfilm informing him that one of the most successful movies.
Your actual question here, you could probably get a tax break because a part of your home is your workspace. Yeah, they literally, the IRS, in order to do that, you have to measure your studio and any area that has actually been on camera and the amount of time that you spend there. So yes, technically a part, like a tiny portion of this house is tax deductible because all of the expenditure in this house, and that's not like being a tax cheat, mind you. That is just like literally in the tax code. So streamer houses are just tax breaks? No, it doesn't work that way, chatter. You can't. If you do that, you will get in trouble. Okay? I just explained it to you. I just explained how this works to you, and you still went, I don't really understand what you're talking about. You can't put your entire fucking house, unless you could technically put your entire fucking house if you're in real estate. If you are a landlord, for example, then you can actually, then you have a completely different way of taxing or using your assets as a mechanism to deduct additional taxes. Do you write off your clothing and jewelry you wear on stream? No, because writing off your clothing or jewelry, which would be fucking hilarious to write off this jewelry. Yeah. My incredibly expensive clothing and jewelry. But I have more expensive clothing than I have jewelry. However, if I were to write that off, it also would be technically not allowed because the tax code dictates that the only kind of clothing that you can write off has to quite literally be a costume. It's not one that you wear on camera, especially if you can wear it off camera. So that is the only thing you can write off in most circumstances. It has to be a uniform or a costume. You cannot write off your regular clothing. People, I'm sure, still try to do it. You're a clown, though. Thanks. Wear a clown costume every day. What do you mean? Yeah. Got it. Tax auditors are really specific about making sure things that are used for business tax reasons are indeed for business tax reasons and not just primary personal. For example, a kitchen in a house is probably not tax deductible unless you say you're a culinary content creator, because otherwise it's just your own personal kitchen. Yes. Why are they hitting you today? Because I think a lot of people are confused, and I'm also giving into it because I do think it's important to learn and understand the difference between tax evasion or just like abiding by the regular tax code. I just don't think that people, I don't think people understand it. Like, people also think, for example, like when you make a tax deductible donation to a 501c3, that just automatically is like money in your pocket. Like the government goes, oh, you donated 170 grand to the Amazon Labor Union, which is not even a 501c3. It's technically not even tax deductible. But let's say if it was, for the sake of this argument, that's 170 grand in your pocket. Like, no, there's a max write-off that you can get. And even after that, it doesn't work that way. It's not like directly taking it off of your, it's not the government giving that money back to you. It doesn't work that way. That would be free money. A new wave of 14-year-olds discovered leftism and now it's a new batch of poverty called chatter. Yeah. NA education and TurboTax has actually helped keep people so in the unknown. Holy fuck. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think it would be better if no one knew what the fucking tax code was and the government already hired the accountants internally at the IRS to just cut a check to every single person or send a bill to every single person at the end of the year. This is how it's done in other countries. You shouldn't need to know how all of this complicated tax structure works. The only reason why a lot of Americans know it is because, let's be real, Americans love cheating on their taxes, okay? It's a huge part of being an American. We love to game the system. We think the American government doesn't really do much for us, which is understandable. It's kind of true. And for that reason, most of us want to fucking cheat on our taxes. A lot of people that have any kind of businesses, a lot of people that have LLCs do that pretty much on a daily basis. That's why SALT was a major thing in Congress. America's tax literally mean win for the wealthy. The average low-income person pays way more percentage than anyone wealthy. Oh, 100%. The moment that you shift your revenue from being a contracted 1099 or a W-2 employee to one that owns capital, your world expands in a dramatic fashion, and it doesn't matter. It's all the way from the guy who only makes like $100,000 to $200,000 a year in revenue from owning capital, all the way to $200 million a year in revenue. It's just quite literally how you make your money. If you make it through a W-2 or a 1099, if you're a contracted employee or if you're a wage laborer with a salary, if you're a salaried employee, the tax structure is very different for you. It's very cut and dry. It's very open and shut. You just fucking, they take it. They take it before you even see it, unless you're 1099. If you're W-2, they already take it. You're already paying your taxes before you even fucking see it in your bank account. Okay? Why is it so fucked for the workers? Well, there's a lot more of workers. There's a lot more of laborers than there are wealthy people. People that make their money off of their pre-existing assets, their pre-existing capital, which is precisely the reason why you have to do it kind of in that way. It's just that it should be the same for those who have capital as well. That's the problem. The problem isn't necessarily that like the W-2 1099 structure is designed in that way. The problem is the structure for capital earnings and capital gains is not designed in a similar capacity. Let's continue.
Movies of all time, which had a production budget of only about $32 million, had still, after almost 4 decades and literal billions of dollars later, had yet to turn a profit. And thus, they don't owe him anything. Naturally, the frankly astounding capability of studio accountants to turn even the biggest box office smash into a failure on paper has led to a running joke in the industry that the most creative people in Hollywood are the guys who do the books. A thing to note before we continue is that while Hollywood is by no means unique in its use of such accounting shenanigans to save money in various ways, what is somewhat unique is that certain entertainment industries, like Hollywood studios and major sports team owners, as we'll get into in one example in the bonus facts in a bit, they use these methods to quite publicly emphasize how much money they lose, something not really observed in most any other industry, where widely broadcasting your losses would normally see stocks plunging. Naturally, because most studios can be fairly confident that their accountants will figure out a way to make sure most films they release will lose money on paper, they can use the sweet allure of a share of a film's net profits to hoodwink unsuspecting creative types, tricking actors, directors, writers, and producers into signing onto a project for less money than they ordinarily would by giving them a percentage of the net profit, knowing full well that they'll never have to pay anything out. For example, consider the case of Winston Groom, who was promised 3% of the net profits of a film based on a little book that he wrote called Forrest Gump. As noted, Paramount would later argue that the film, which cleared almost 13 times its production budget, a total of $700 million at the box office, or about $1.2 billion today, had actually lost $62 million, all in an attempt to weasel out of paying Groom, among others. After the story blew up, Paramount settled the matter out of court and offered Groom a 7-figure contract for rights to the sequel to Forrest Gump. Soon after this, Groom mysteriously stopped accusing Paramount of trying to rip him off and explained that the whole thing had been blown out of proportion. On a similar note, when looking at the aforementioned Lord of the Rings trilogy, New Line Cinema seems to have managed to piss off countless individuals and entities, including most notably Peter Jackson and the Tolkien estate itself, by claiming one of the most successful trilogies in history was a massive financial failure, and thus allegedly not paying what Jackson and the Tolkien estate were due in the process. Similarly,
it's almost like the people that are giving you what your wages are, the bosses, and the people that are receiving those wages, the workers in this circumstance, contracted employees like actors, are in an antagonistic relationship, like directly. because this kind of accounting proves that, right? I mean, they write it in your contract that you get points off fucking movie, and then they massage the numbers in a way that goes, well, the movie didn't make any money, actually. It lost money. Because that is the case, that they are antagonistic. That's the class antagonism at the heart of capitalism. That's how it works.
Later, 15 of the actors on the film would go on to sue New Line, noting that they had been supposed to get 5% of the merchandise sales, which mysteriously, allegedly, lost money despite bringing in excess of $100 million at the time for the studio. A similar example is that of the late Stan Lee, who was promised 10% of the profits made on the 2002 live-action Spider-Man film and walked away with nothing after the movie, which grossed $800 million at the box office, didn't turn a profit on paper, despite having a production cost of only $139 million. When Lee raised the issue in court, the matter was quietly and quickly settled out of court. Although the terms of the deal reached with Lee were never disclosed and various figures have been thrown out, it would appear, at the least, that Marvel Studios decided to start paying the comic legend a yearly salary of $1 million for doing basically nothing, as well as gave him an honorary executive producer credit on every movie they produced while he was alive.
They always find a different way of just like paying you, for the record. That's why those Hollywood contracts are so fucking fat. But always remember, those Hollywood, just like LeBron James's salary, his contract versus how much money he's generating for the fucking Lakers franchise. If LeBron James is getting paid $90 million, well, then the Lakers, baby, they're making $1 billion. You know what I mean? That's just how it fucking works.
Live. It's presumed that Lee waived his claim to 10% of the net profits generated by films based on his creations at some point as part of this deal, not that they'd have been worth anything anyway because of how the books are cooked. In this case, it would appear the companies involved were simply keen on avoiding the bad publicity that would come from shafting one of the most popular people in the industry. All that said, one instance where a studio was actually given a bit of a slap on the wrist in recent years for these rather shady bookkeeping practices, and a case that some...
For the record, one of the worst aspects of this, like in the old distribution model of like box office ticket sales, merchandising, and then DVD and constant IP cycling through television and the like. And that was the old distribution model. Labor unions such as SAG, AFTRA, WGA fought very hard to retain a percentage in the form of residuals, right? They didn't want to do that back then for that old distribution model. These guys fought very hard to make sure that they got a percentage of the DVD sales and whatnot, okay? But in the new model, the reason why, if you're wondering, like, why are these people constantly fucking fighting? Like, what's happening with these labor unions? Why are they picketing? Why are they striking? Because there's a new model in town. It's called streamers. And I'm not talking about Twitch streaming, like the one, like what I'm doing here. I'm talking about what Hollywood calls streamers, like Paramount Plus, HBO Max, now called Max. I'm just stupid, but whatever. Netflix, Hulu. These are the streaming platforms where the majority of content is created and the majority of content is cycled through. So in the new distribution strategy, studios and big publishers, big developers have decided, well, we get to retain more of the profits as a matter of fact this way. We don't have to give you back anything as a matter of fact. And we can even shelve certain projects and stop cycling it through our streaming platforms if that means you make less money. And it can always be a good way to, write off and deduct more from taxes. So that's precisely what is going on here. And that's the reason why they are currently picketing. That's the reason why WGA, SAG, and AFTRA are currently striking. That's the reason why IATSE, on top of obviously horrifying workplace conditions, was originally fighting for, because streamers also came with a new set of standards for workplace conditions as well. That's it.
within the industry hope sees studios playing a little more fairly in the future is when an arbitrator in 2019 ordered 21st Century Fox to pay $179 million to various individuals involved in the show Bones. Among other things, the arbitrator, Peter Lichtman, criticized the deal Fox made when signing over the streaming rights to the show to Hulu, an entity which Fox owned a large stake in, now, interestingly enough, mostly owned by Disney, so if you're paying for Hulu and Disney Plus, you're kind of paying Disney twice for streaming. So what was wrong with this deal? Fox not only gave the streaming rights for the show away practically for free by industry standards, but, says Lichtman, perhaps the most shocking piece of evidence related to the Hulu issues, Fox actually signed both sides of this agreement. Mr. Dan Fawcett signed the Fox content license agreement on behalf of FAG, Fox Entertainment Group, and Hulu.
Yeah, this is what happens when you also own the streaming platform. You're the studio and you own the streaming platform. So you're covering the production aspect of it and you're covering the streamer side of it. So you're signing both sides of a contract. Unlike myself, where I signed one contract with Amazon to serve you a top of the hour ad break at the top of every hour. And Amazon tells me, Hasan, you have to do that 4 minutes an hour. That is how it works. These guys get to sign both sides of that fucking contract and they can dictate the terms and change numbers on either side to suit whatever purpose they have. At the top of the hour, however, there's a 3-minute ad break. You didn't sign a contract, but you will see an ad unless you subscribe for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime. By connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, you get one free Prime subscription a month. Use it on your favorite broadcaster. Hopefully your favorite broadcaster is me. You can also get gifted a sub if you are lucky. Here is the 3-minute ad break now. Fanboy Agitprop, thank you for the 5 gifted. Hunten Keshin, thank you for the 5 gifted as well. Streaming annoyingly makes it so much harder to track the profits per each project because it's no longer based on ads. Yes, there's no asses in seats that you can log. There's no ticket sales that you need to show anybody. It's completely hidden in a black box. And the reality is, these dudes, especially because of their market interests, do not want to release their internal metric. If you don't release your internal streaming numbers, as Netflix hides it, right? You can, one, lie about it, which is great. You could just say, this is the most watched news. This is the most watched fucking show of all time. 7 gorillion people watched it, and everyone has to believe you because, you know, there's no other alternative way to see how many people actually watched it, right? Crossing the picket line. Give NCAA athletes pay based on how much money they bring in for the organization in general. 2, let me strike crossing the picket line right now. 2, if they don't reveal their internal numbers on how much a show is being watched by people, then they can get away with paying whatever the fuck they want to the writers and to the actors. They can just say, sorry, nobody watched your shit. You get $10. Okay? It's such a major dub for Netflix to be able to get away without revealing this kind of information that it's unimaginable for them to ever be forced to reveal this information.
Hulu. Naturally, in this way, Hulu would make a massive profit on the show, while Fox itself would only show mild income from the streaming rights. In response to all of this, the Fox lawyers were bold enough to note that Bones, despite being one of the most successful shows in the network's history, was only a, to quote them, middling show with middling ratings. Thus, Fox execs didn't think it was worth much to Hulu. The arbitrator didn't agree, noting similarly rated shows had streaming rights sometimes selling for the hundreds of millions of dollars, and thus, after all his tallying and tacking on a bit extra just for Fox being allegedly so unscrupulous, he ultimately doled out a $179 million ruling against Fox. So, moving on to how this whole Hollywood accounting thing got started, it's largely thought this was in response to studios getting wise to actors taking advantage of gross revenue sharing schemes which started en masse around the 1940s. Specifically, industry experts often point to Rita Hayworth as a trailblazer in this regard, as the starlet's agents are known to have secured lucrative deals for the actress that saw her taking home 25% of the gross for many of the films she starred in. Being rather dense, allegedly, studio execs wouldn't actively work to change this precedent until the 1960s and 1970s, when such deals were
Shaking Kai is breathing hard. Yeah, she's fucking sleeping and dreaming, weirdo.
All the rage. Things began to change thanks to actor Warren Beatty, who somehow managed to argue for an astounding 40% of the gross of Bonnie and Clyde in return for reducing his usual fee. The movie went on to gross, adjusted for inflation, about $500 million, which was about 30 times its original production budget. Naturally, losing 40% of that to Beatty stung a bit, and finally made studios start to realize that with an abundance of talented actors who would sell their own souls for a bit of fame, they probably didn't need to give out gross deals like that except in rare cases. Doubling down, they seem to have realized that they could still reduce pay anyway by instead giving out net profit deals and then cook the books so they didn't actually have to pay anything extra to anyone. In the end, Hollywood accounting is an often mocked and derided element of film production that many in the industry would happily see die and be replaced by a fairer, more transparent system. However, this
Like, Hollywood accounting directly is an attack on, like, Hollywood accounting is done in a way to, one, cheat in taxes, but also to pay less to your specific workers. Less than what you originally signed on with a deal. Bro, I think you have a dog behind you just checking. What's wild is when you get into Tobashi type schemes where shell companies with different accounting periods from the parent holding company, you just shift around the times you recognize incomes. Oh, I don't even understand how, I mean, that seems insane. Why do residuals work on something like the CW but not something like Hulu? Like, why wouldn't cable TV networks lie about their views? Because cable TV networks a long time ago decided to run on a Nielsen metrics rating system. That metric system is also not great. There are Nielsen families that are supposed to be like perfectly representative of the broader American TV watcher audience, and they analyze who's watching what off of that. But at least there is more transparency in that situation than what you get with streaming services, especially streaming services that don't have any ad revenue whatsoever, like Netflix. What the fuck? This is a sick emote. That's how Hassan feels about chatters telling him how to parent.
This isn't likely to happen unless someone can convince major studios to loosen up the kung fu death grip they have on the throat of the industry. We can only hope that one day someone makes a movie about the whole thing that somehow fails to turn a profit despite grossing $1 billion. But while we wait on that, as Sylvester Stallone sums up when lamenting the rather paltry amount he was given compared to how much the Rocky franchise and merchandise has made, the studio is the power, the agency relies upon them, and the attorneys are the go-betweens. When I finally confronted them just before Rocky IV in 1985, I said, "Does it bother you guys that I've written every word, I've choreographed it, I've been loyal to you, I've promoted it, directed it, and I don't have 1% that I could leave for my children?" And the quote was, "You got paid."
Yeah.
And that was the end of the conversation. I love the system, don't get me wrong. My kids and their kids, they're taken care of because of the system. But there are dark little segues and people that have put it to you. They say the definition of Hollywood is someone who stabs you in the chest. They don't even hide it. And now for a bonus fact. As alluded to, Hollywood accounting, to try to show losses when you actually made a huge profit, isn't just limited to Hollywood, as has recently been seen with the ongoing, rather messy battle between the Major League Baseball Players Association and MLB franchise owners. In this case, multiple Major League Baseball owners have been very publicly crying poor by noting they don't profit much or at all each year, despite, by just about any reasonable ballpark figure you want to look at, showing the league should be profiting billions annually. They are, of course, seeming to employ many of the same tricks as Hollywood to ensure that on paper they don't technically make a profit, but the value of their franchises and the league, of course, continually increases by doing things like taking profits each year and investing in land around stadiums, purchasing larger stakes in the very sports networks that show their games, again using the trick of then essentially having a second company that pays themselves, etc., thereby turning many billions each year of profit into losses for the clubs on paper. Naturally, the Players Association, beyond rejecting overtures of revenue sharing during this season, which of course would very likely just see ownership cooking the books in their favor a la Hollywood, isn't exactly buying the we lose money argument in the recent negotiations, especially as the ownership is on the whole refusing to open their books to show that's happening at all. That said, while the Players Association isn't buying it, many among the general public are, which is of course why the owners are being so vocal about how unprofitable baseball is, despite the franchises themselves mysteriously selling for billions anyway. Clearly, the billionaires buying and running these teams have no idea how to manage money, paying billions for franchises that just hemorrhage losses every year. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe. Also, please do check out our fantastic sponsor, Mack Weldon. And thank you for watching.